Psalm 120. In my distress, I called to the Lord, and he answered me. Deliver me, O Lord, from lying lips, from a deceitful tongue. What does he give to you, and what does he add to you, O deceitful tongue? A warrior's sharp arrows with glowing coals of the broom tree. Woe to me that I sojourn in Meshech, that I dwell among the tents of Kedar. Too long have I had my dwelling among those who hate peace. I am for peace, but when I speak, they are for war. We're going to look at this psalm line by line. And it's all along the theme of speak truth. Verse 1, in my distress I called to the Lord, and he answered me. Verse 2, deliver me, O Lord, from lying lips and from a deceitful tongue. It's not good to lie, is it? It's not good to be deceitful. And he's saying, Lord, deliver me. I don't want to lie. I don't want to have lying lips. I don't want to speak in a deceitful way. I don't want that. So, Lord, deliver me from being that way, from doing that. So on one level, we can all understand that just to mean we don't want to tell lies. We don't want to be deceitful. We want to be upfront and honest. And that is what it means. But there's something more here. What the psalmist is really calling out for is that God will help him to always be true to God's truth in the things he says. Always reflect God's truth in what he says. Now, if you think about your life, if I think about my life, and I think about at times the things that come out of my mouth that I speak to myself, or at times that I speak to other people, and then I think there are times when what I say doesn't really line up with what God says. Sometimes what I say about myself or to myself doesn't line up with God's truth. Sometimes what I say to others doesn't always perfectly line up with what God says, with God's truth. Now, this might sound a little bit tough, but it's a fact that if what we're saying to ourselves or to others doesn't line up with God's truth, then it's lying. It's either a truth or a lie. There's really nowhere in between. And so David, or whoever wrote the psalm, is saying, Lord, deliver me. I want my lips to speak your truth and only your truth. I want my lips to be honest and true to who you are and what you say and what you want. I don't want my lips to be deceitful. I don't want to deceive myself or anyone else about who you are and what you want and how things work. Does that make sense? Now, he goes on here in verse 3 to say, what does he give to you? And what does he add to you, O deceitful tongue? A warrior's sharp arrows with glowing coals of the broom tree. So he's speaking to his deceitful tongue. And he's saying, what does God give to you, you deceitful tongue? What does God add to you? So he's saying, you're a deceitful tongue. What is God going to give you? What is God going to add to you, you lying lip or you deceitful tongue? And then he gives the answer. God is going to add or give you a warrior's sharp arrows and glowing coals of the broom tree. Well, I think we can get pretty easily a sense of what he's saying here. Sharp arrows are going to pierce, aren't they? They're going to pierce through. He's saying God's going to pierce you, deceitful tongue, with his truth. That's what he's going to do. Like a sharp arrow coming off a bow. It comes fast and it comes hard and it pierces. That's what God's going to do. At some point, he's saying, the deceit that's coming off your tongue is going to be met with the sharp arrow of God's truth. It's going to happen. That's what God's going to add to you, deceitful tongue. And along with that, glowing coals of the broom tree. So think of a tree, in this case a broom tree, and maybe a branch or a trunk of it is cut off and it's set on fire. And now you've got those glowing red hot embers of that tree. That's going to burn, isn't it? If you touch it, it's going to burn you. So he's saying God is going to add to you, deceitful tongue. He's going to burn that deceit. He's going to burn away those lies. In the book of Isaiah, the prophet Isaiah had a vision of God. He saw him. He actually saw the Lord. He says, I saw the Lord high and lifted up, and the length of his robe filled the whole temple. And in the presence of God, Isaiah, he said, woe is me. I'm undone. I'm a man of unclean lips, and I dwell among a people of unclean lips. Isaiah was acknowledging, look, I don't always speak truth. The things I say don't always line up with God's truth. And the people I live amongst, we're all the same. You know, our lips and our tongues and our voices, we don't always use them to reflect truth. We use them to reflect often untruth, lies, deceit, that which does not line up with God. Unclean lips. And so in this amazing picture of when Isaiah had his vision of God, he saw a seraphim, which is a heavenly creature, let's just say that for now. A seraphim take from the altar of God a burning coal and came, and what do you think he did with it? You know where I'm going with this, don't you? He touched Isaiah's lips and he said, your sin is purged away. And this was important because Isaiah was going to then become a prophet of God. He was a prophet of God. He was going to be speaking on God's behalf. He had to be speaking truth. He knew his lips needed cleansing. And so they were burnt with this coal. That's what he experienced in the vision. So what's God going to give to our lying lips, to our deceitful tongue? Sharp arrows of truth and a burning coal straight from his presence that burns away that uncleanness, that impurity. Hard words, tough things to think about, but so important, you know? Because ultimately it's only the truth that stands. Everything that's built on lies collapses at the end, and only that which is built on and reflects the truth of God has the power to last. Now, if we get back to this Psalm 120 and we look at verse 5, the writer, the psalmist, continues to speak about his situation. Now, bear in mind, he's still asking God, deliver me from these lying lips, from this deceit. Take that away from me. Verse 5, woe to me that I sojourn in Meshech, that I dwell among the tents of Kedar. Too long have I had my dwelling among those who hate peace. Now, to understand this part, we'll start with the second line. Too long have I had my dwelling amongst those who hate peace. Now, I don't know if you've ever felt that way. Like, man, you know, we live in a world, or I'm in this workplace or whatever, and the people around me, they all seem to actually hate what's good, hate what's right, hate truth, hate peace. In Hebrew, the word peace here is shalom. And the word shalom doesn't just mean peace as in there's no turmoil. It means well-being. Everything is whole and right and true and good. Well-being. When Israelis meet each other in the street or write to each other, they don't say hi, they say shalom. They're wishing you well-being. They're wishing that every part of your body, your soul, will be well. That's what the word peace means in Hebrew. So this psalmist is saying, for too long I've lived amongst people that hate wholeness. They hate well-being. You know, they're on another track. They have a different agenda. And he's longing for a change. He wants to be different. He wants to be someone who speaks truth, who isn't deceitful. And that's why he says, woe to me that I sojourn in Meshech. To sojourn basically means to stay somewhere temporarily. So he's saying, woe to me. And woe to me means it's really bad. It means my situation is really, really bad. Woe to me, because I'm temporarily living in Meshech. Well, what's Meshech? Well, Meshech is referred to in the Old Testament, in the book of Ezekiel. It was a tribe, it was a place, and they were slavers. They would take slaves and deal in slaves. Meshech. It's actually geographically in modern-day Turkey, a place in modern-day Turkey, a region, and it was known for slavery, taking slaves. He's saying, woe to me, it's really bad because I'm temporarily living amongst people who deal in slaves. And later on in the book of Ezekiel, we're told, and this is actually a prophecy for the future of the world that we're yet to have see fulfilled, that Meshech, along with some other regions, will rise up against Israel and attack. Which, a quick side point here, if you're interested in geopolitics, it's interesting to see recently how Turkey has been growing in power, becoming more assertive, and threatening Israel, even this last week. It's prophesied in Ezekiel 38 and 39 that Meshech, that's part of Turkey, will rise up against Israel. So when he says, I temporarily am living in Meshech, he's saying I'm temporarily living amongst people who deal in slaves and who rise up against God. Not a good situation. Now, let's just apply that to ourselves for a minute. Yes, we might live amongst people who rise up against God in different ways. Yes, we might live amongst people who like to control others in certain ways that's equivalent to taking slaves. Yes, we might live amongst people who would even like to control us. That's equivalent to taking slaves. Maybe we do live in a form of Meshech. Certainly in our minds, if we allow our minds to be filled, infiltrated by lies rather than the truth of God, we are sojourning, we're dwelling in Meshech. The thoughts in our mind are making us captive. The thoughts in our mind are rising up against God. They're working against our well-being. So do you see how when you read the Bible, you can see its application in a geopolitical way? You can see it in terms of society and the people that you live around. But you can also see it in terms of within your own internal kingdom of who you are. Woe to me, it's bad, because I'm dwelling temporarily in this place, for example, in my head, where I'm being taken captive. Where I am, and I'm being taken captive by things and people and ideas that are rising up against God. You could, to give an example, say every addiction is an example of this. Every single one is an example of dwelling in Meshech, captivated by things that are rising up against God, that hate well-being. I mean, you've got to give it to this psalmist. He's very honest with God, and so we should be. We should be honest with God. You know, yesterday I had a visit from a dear man, came into the market. He's a Catholic. He's in his 60s, I would say. He loves God. He's definitely Christian. But he's very young in understanding what it's all about. So he said to me, I've been really thinking, he said, why do they tell me? Why do I have to pray this Hail Mary 10 times in a row? The same words. He said, I've just begun to wonder if maybe prayer shouldn't be that. It should be something different. And I said, yeah. I said, well, it's like any friendship or relationship. You don't just sit down in front of your friend and then repeat the same thing 10 times that's been written for you. You know, you speak to them from your heart and from your mind and from where you are, and you listen to them, and that's what prayer is about. And so it's good to be honest, truthful with God, to let him know us as much as we know him. And this psalmist is doing that. He's speaking to God from his heart. He's saying, it's really bad. I'm sojourning in Meshech. And he says, I'm dwelling among the tents of Kedar. So what's this? What's Kedar? Well, Kedar is also referred to in Isaiah, the prophet Isaiah, the same one who had the vision and whose lips were cleansed with the coal. And they're described as a tribe of archers. They were bowmen. So do you see the parallel? God is going to send his sharp arrows of truth to deal with this lying tongue, because this man and his lying tongue have been living amongst archers, those who hate God, who are firing arrows of untruth into his mind, into his life, and it's bad. Now, the truth is that every human being has had arrows of untruth fired into their life along the way. And they come from the devil. He's the father of lies. They come in. Again, a slight illustration. Yesterday, talking with another chap at the market, we were discussing mind control and how at different times in history, and particularly recently, let's just say various institutions have perfected the art of mind control. And partly how they do it is by, when they can, starting very young, bringing trauma into the life of the young. And then what they can do is take control of that mind, because that mind is traumatized. They can work that mind into compartments that they can then insert different thoughts into. And then finally, you've got a clone or a slave or someone who's just going to do what they did. Mind control. Firing arrows of untruth in. You know, bad things happen to everyone. Some of it is just what happens in life because we live in a world that's, in one sense of the word, broken. But what Satan does, he tries to seize on those moments and bring in those lies, fire those arrows of untruth into the trauma of different situations, because then he can manipulate the people that he's attacking. So this psalmist, he's like, it's bad. I'm sojourning in Kedar, slavers who are all up against God. And I'm amongst these people that are firing arrows of untruth and hatred. It's bad. It's bad. Too long have I had my dwelling amongst those who hate peace, who hate shalom. Can you feel his longing here? Like, this has just gone on too long. I want truth. I want to know truth. I want to love truth. I want to speak truth. I've had enough of all this other stuff. Verse 7, I am for peace, but when I speak, they are for war. He wants peace. He believes in peace. He believes in experiencing peace and promoting peace. Peace, again, being shalom, well-being. That's what he wants. I imagine that might be what you want as well. He says, this is who I am. I'm a man of peace. But when I speak, when I open my mouth and begin to say things, there's a clash, because they want war. And the fact is that as you, in different areas of your life, begin to believe and trust and speak the truth of God to yourself, to others, don't expect it to be a picnic. Don't expect it to be easy. Because the moment you begin to do that, the devil and his agents of all kinds will be right there to fire arrows of untruth at you, to declare war on you. One of the best things I ever read in terms of helping me understand my Christian life was a writer called Robert McGee. And he said, too many Christians expect life to be a joyride or a picnic. And they don't understand when it's tough and it's hard to follow Jesus and to do what's right. And they think something must be wrong with them because it's so hard. They think it must be because something's wrong. He said, no, nothing's wrong. Life, and especially life with God, it's a war zone. It's a battlefield. It's not a picnic on the beach. So when we speak for peace, don't be surprised that they want war. But you know what? I don't know about you, but there's a certain satisfaction that comes from fighting and winning in these wars on a personal level and for other people. And that's what this psalmist is really wanting to get to. He's saying, look, I called on the Lord, I was distressed, I was really broken up, and he answered me. I said to him, deliver me, Lord, from deceitful lips and a lying tongue. I don't want to be a liar. I don't want to lie to myself or others. I only want to reflect God's truth. For too long, I've lived amongst lies, and I've had enough. I want peace. They want war. Bring it on. But we're going to be standing on the truth. So, important things, to speak truth. And I want to bring that to you today in a very personal way, in your own life. As you go through your day, your hour, your 5 minutes, different thoughts come to you, different words are proceeding from your mouth. Speak truth. Speak what's in line with God. You might say, well, I don't really know what's in line with God because I'm young in my faith or I'm confused at times. You might not feel like you know a lot, but you know enough to begin to reflect the truth in what you say. And that will just grow as you get to know him more. That's why I read the Bible so much, because I want that truth to be permeating constantly. And I know I can rely on it. Ephesians 4:25, putting away lying, let each speak truth with his neighbour, because we're members of one another. Ephesians 4:25, putting away lying, let each one speak truth with his neighbour, because we're members of one another. So this kind of sums it up on a practical level, doesn't it? Let's put away those lies. Let's just be done with them. And if we realise, oh man, I just lied, like I just said something that wasn't true, just say sorry and it'll be different next time, right? Yep. Putting away lying. Let each one speak truth with his neighbour. Doesn't just mean the person next door. It means everyone. Let each one speak truth with his neighbour. Let each one. That means every single one of us. No exceptions, doesn't matter who you are. Let each one of us do this. Speak truth with his neighbour. Remember, what we mean by truth is what lines up with God, what agrees with God. Why should we do this? Because we are members of one another. Remember, we are the body of Christ, part of the body of Christ. And each one of us is a member of the body of Christ. And therefore, if we're all part of the body of Christ, we're all part of the same body, then we're members of each other. My right hand is a member with my left hand. They belong in the same body. It wouldn't do much good if my right hand was constantly like twisting my left hand around and trying to break the fingers backwards and damage it, would it? It wouldn't be much good. Something would be deeply wrong. Well, let's think of that in terms of interpersonal relationships. If I speak truth to you, it's going to edify you. It might bless you, it might encourage you, it might comfort you, it might challenge you deeply. But it's going to be good, it's going to help. If you do the same for me, it's going to help. So let's do that with one another. It's challenging, isn't it? Because it causes us to reflect on how we speak and what we say. A lot there. I won't say any more. I think it's all encapsulated in there. Speak truth.